Hello, all you freedom-loving people. President Trump met with Argentine President Javier Milei. Charlie Kirk was honored with the Medal of Honor today, which would have been his 32nd birthday, and 1,500 illegals have been arrested so far in Illinois. Okay, let's get into it. President Trump held a meeting with Argentinian President Javier Milei today at the White House. This was the first time that Milei met President Trump at the White House. The first two held a working lunch. The meeting came as the United States recently finalized a $20 billion economic rescue plan in order to stabilize the Argentine peso and to support President Milei's reform agenda ahead of this month's midterm elections in Argentina. Milei suffered an electoral setback last month against the left-leaning Peronist, who advocates for the former Argentinian President Juan Perón. But even so, prediction markets indicate that President Milei and his La Libertad Avanza party are regaining momentum ahead of the midterms. During lunch today, when asked how the $20 billion rescue package for Argentina is America First, Secretary of State Marco Rubio explained.
Could you give a couple of words on South America? You were telling me so well yesterday how well we're doing. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, we have now 8 or 9, 10 countries, Argentina being foremost among them, that have aligned with the United States on issue after issue in international community events all over the world. They're, in fact, these great allies like Argentina, but I can go into others, Costa Rica, I don't want to leave anybody out, El Salvador, but I think one of the more promising developments is later this month, there'll be an election in Bolivia. After 25, 30 years of anti-American hostile government, both of the candidates running in that election, in the runoff election, want strong and better relations with the United States. There's another transformative opportunity there.
President Trump also said that China's recent purchases of Argentine soybeans over those from the United States is an example of the Chinese regime trying to draw a wedge between the U.S. and Argentina. President Trump said it's China and it's natural, but it's not going to mean anything. President Trump also said that the upcoming legislative elections in Argentina on October 26 will determine whether the United States continues supporting Argentina.
So it comes through the White House. The funding for New York and for every place comes through the White House. And I'm very generous, and I was always very generous with New York, even when you had opposition there, but I was always very generous. But I wouldn't be generous to a communist, a guy that's going to take the money and throw it out the window, because you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're not going to let somebody get into office and squander the taxpayer money from this country. We're not going to let it happen. So it's a little bit like that with, if you take a look at Argentina, if the president doesn't win, I know the person that he'd be running against, I believe, probably. We probably have the person. A person is extremely far left and a philosophy that got Argentina into this problem in the first place. So we would not be generous with Argentina if that happened. If he loses, we are not going to be generous with Argentina.
The Trump administration's $20 billion currency swap agreement with Argentina has drawn criticism from some left-wing lawmakers. However, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated that the currency swap assistance provided by the United States is not a bailout, but rather a form of support. This comes as Argentine President Javier Milei is actively working to expel Chinese communist influence from Argentina. The United States will assist Argentina in stabilizing its economic situation. Bessent stated on Fox News that Argentina is a beacon of hope in Latin America, and the country's president is making the right decisions. He is striving to break Argentina's century-long cycle of misfortune while also serving as a steadfast ally to the United States. Bessent stated that Milei pledged to drive CCP influence out of Argentina. The CCP is currently ubiquitous throughout Latin America. He pointed out that the funds provided by the United States were not transferred into the Exchange Stabilization Fund, nor were they direct cash disbursements to Argentina. Instead, they constituted a supportive, investment-oriented financial operation aimed at preventing Argentina from becoming a failed state, while bolstering an ally and stabilizing the economy. Bessent has 40 years of experience in the investment industry. His expertise lies primarily in the foreign exchange sector. During the Asian financial crisis at the end of the last century, Bissett was one of the key figures behind the shorting of the Japanese yen. He believes the Argentine peso is currently undervalued. Furthermore, Argentina will hold general elections on the 26th of this month. The White House anticipates President Milei will perform quite well. He is steering Argentina away from the old Peronist path. The White House move also aims to send a signal to other Latin American countries. Argentina, Paraguay, and Ecuador have all moved towards center-right politics. Colombia may follow suit in the next election. The United States will support its allies, citing Argentina as an example. While taking questions during lunch, President Trump discussed the federal government shutdown and the possible issues for military operations during the shutdown. He explained how he will handle the funding if the government shutdown continues.
I actually have a man who is a very wealthy person, you'll know that when I tell you this, who called a donor, a great gentleman, and he said, if there's any money necessary, shortfall, for the paying of the troops, that I will pay it, meaning he will pay it. How about that?
President Trump also assured reporters that the Hamas terrorist group would disarm. He said, if they don't, we will disarm them.
They're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games. Okay? Now, we did something monumental. We got the hostages back. That was the first thing we had to do. Above all else, get the hostages back. Now, they misrepresented because we were told they had 26, 24 of dead hostages, if we can use those terms. And it seems as though they don't have that because we're talking about a much lesser number. But that's a very tough subject. I want them back. That's what they said. I want them back. Also, they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes. You say
because
quickly.
you always, everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm or we will disarm them. Got it?
Today, the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, announced that more than 1,500 illegal immigrants were arrested in Illinois by DHS personnel during Operation Midway Blitz. The DHS wrote on X, Operation Midway Blitz is making Illinois safe again. DHS law enforcement has made over 1,500 arrests across Illinois, including of pedophiles, vicious gang members, and armed robbers. Operation Midway Blitz, which was launched on September 8th, targets criminal illegal immigrants who came to Illinois and specifically Chicago. Over the weekend, the DHS also announced the arrest of a Chicago rioter suspected of ties to Antifa. The individual was arrested with a loaded firearm and magazines outside the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Broadview facility near Chicago. The rioter, who was identified as Elias Cepeda, works as a journalist and as a teacher at the University of Illinois. According to the DHS, Cepeda has promoted social media posts that glorify violence. The DHS official said that he made posts expressing violence toward ICE and referring to ICE officers as Nazis. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement that Cepeda has a history of glorifying violence against and the killing of our brave law enforcement. Thank God law enforcement intervened and arrested Cepeda before he could have potentially shot or killed anyone. On Friday, in an interview, Border Czar Tom Homan said that the Justice Department has launched an investigation into the sources of funding for what he called organized attacks on federal officers. Homan said that you've got 300 people show up with the same masks, same shields, the same weapons. Are they all going to the same mini-mart and buying the same stuff? No. That's being supplied to them. They're being paid to do this. So Homan said DOJ officials are all over this and that they are working to identify the funders. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino also shared a post on X yesterday about an investigation by the FBI into Antifa. The post said that the FBI has launched a full investigation into Antifa and that it spent the weekend contacting journalists who have been victims of Antifa. Meanwhile, the protests against ICE operations in Chicago that are near the ICE Broadview facility still continue, with protesters clashing with ICE officers. At the same time, the deployment of National Guard troops to Chicago is still going through legal challenges. On Friday, a federal judge granted the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago a temporary restraining order to block the deployment of the National Guard. In response, the Trump administration filed an appeal with the 7th Circuit Court, and the court ruled on Saturday that National Guard troops could remain under federal control, but the appeals court declined to stay the lower court's order. So for now, most of those troops that were deployed from Texas to Chicago have remained at the Army Reserve Training Center in Illinois. But a small group of those troops was sent to an ICE building in Broadview. Some of those troops from that small group, however, have been removed from duty and replaced. They were replaced because they failed the new military fitness standards. These standards are part of War Secretary Pete Hegseth's push to bring back strict height, weight, and readiness requirements across the military. The replacement came after ABC News published some photos showing Guard personnel arriving at a Chicago airfield. The photos, which went viral on social media, drew criticism over apparent weight issues and raising questions about the implementation of the new fitness rules at the Pentagon. In response, and after the replacement, Hegseth wrote on X yesterday saying that standards are back at the Pentagon. Hegseth also shared a headline from an article from Task and Purpose, which is a platform focusing on the military community. The article cited a Texas Military Department spokesperson as saying that a small group of the 200 National Guard members have been replaced after being found to be non-compliant with certain military requirements. Today, October 14th, marks the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk. Today would have been Charlie's 32nd birthday. The Trump administration celebrated the date with a ceremony at the White House today. Many, including Charlie's widow, Erika Kirk, attended the event and celebrated the day. This was the first event that was held in the Rose Garden since it was recently renovated. During his opening remarks, President Trump remembered the first time he met Charlie.
October 14th is Charlie's birthday, and he should have been turning 32 years old. I tell you, when I first met him, he was like 22. And I said, boy, he's awfully young. But I thought he was older than that. You know, he looked a little bit older than his age. That's okay. You know, that's not good when you're old. But when you're young, it's great. He had the best of all things, but he was special. But instead, Charlie is attaining a far more important milestone. We're entering his name forever into the eternal roster of true American heroes. He's a true American hero, an amazing person, way, way beyond his years.
President Trump also praised Erika for inspiring the nation with her love for her husband.
And I'm honored to be joined by a woman who has endured unspeakable hardship with unbelievable strength, and that's Charlie's widow, Erika. And I just want to thank you, Erika. He loved you so much. I was with him. Oh, please. Thank you, darling. Thank you. I was with him before I met Erika, and he told me he was going to get married. He said, "You won't believe how beautiful she is." I said, well, then now that I meet her, he's right. But then he also said, and you know what? She's like the smartest person I know. See, they do go together on occasion. Not often. But on occasion they go together. But he was in love with you. He was deeply in love with you. It's great. Erika, your love and courage have been an inspiration to all of us, and we will always be here for you, and we're always going to be here for your gorgeous, beautiful children. And we'll never forget what your family has sacrificed for our country. Man loved our country. When things were going badly for our country, he was so, as you know, angry. He would get angry because he said it doesn't have to be that way.
Then President Trump posthumously awarded the Medal of Freedom to Charlie through Erika Kirk.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Charles James Kirk. Accepting on behalf of Charlie is his wife, Mrs. Erika Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of the most influential American political figures of his generation. At just 18 years old, he founded Turning Point USA and grew it into the largest conservative youth organization in the nation. For over a decade, he tirelessly traveled the country leading a movement to restore respect for our founding principles, reawaken our national identity, and inspire a renewed spirit of religious devotion. He was one of the great debaters and communicators of his time. Despite receiving repeated threats, he remained undeterred and modeled courage, logic, humor, and grace to the next generation. On September 10th, 2025, at age 31, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while addressing a group of students. The United States honors him as a martyr for truth and freedom.
The very existence of the Presidential Medal of Freedom reminds us that the national interest of the United States has always been freedom. Our founders etched it into the preamble of our Constitution, and those words are not relics on parchment. They are a living covenant. The blessings of liberty are not man's invention, they are God's endowment. And he believed that liberty was both a right and a responsibility. And he used to say, freedom is the ability to do what is right without fear. And in one of his journal entries, he wrote that he wanted everyone to know that you can't have liberty without moral responsibility. Freedom divorced from faith eventually just destroys itself. And so, honestly, President Trump, I have spent 7.5 years trying to find the perfect birthday gift for Charlie. And it's so difficult. And those of you that have spouses or loved ones, you know how difficult it is sometimes to buy a gift for someone that you love, because he wasn't a materialistic man, so that also did not help. But now I can say with confidence, Mr. President, that you have given him the best birthday gift he could ever have.
Security agencies are investigating how the personal phone numbers of political leaders were published in an online database today. Contact information for a number of officials from around the world, including President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, are among those who were listed on the website. The Australian Associated Press reported that the website claimed to scrape information from public internet pages, including LinkedIn. Richard Marles, the acting Prime Minister of Australia, said that the Australian government was aware that the details had been exposed and that they are looking into it. Marles said, "We are obviously aware of this. We've notified authorities and that is being worked through, but obviously there is concern there." The website claims to use AI to scan social media, job portals, and other platforms for contact details. It allows users limited free searches in the database with millions of contacts available. There's also the option to subscribe for more access. The website allows anyone to fill out a form to opt out of their details being displayed, and it promises that requests will be processed within 1 week. While there are suggestions that LinkedIn might have been the original source of the data, LinkedIn said it appears to be a case of data scraping and found no evidence of a system breach. The spokesperson for LinkedIn said in a statement to the Australian Associated Press, "Our policies are clear that third-party companies taking personal data and using it in ways our members do not agree to is prohibited, and these companies are not affiliated with LinkedIn." Yesterday, we mentioned that during his address to the Knesset, President Trump asked his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to now focus on ending the Ukraine war. Today, in response, Russia welcomed President Trump's desire to focus on the search for a peace deal to end the war in Ukraine after achieving peace in Gaza. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that we are already well acquainted with Mr. Witkoff. He is effective, has proven his effectiveness now in the Middle East, and we hope that his talents will continue to contribute to the work already underway in Ukraine. For now, the peace talks are in limbo since Russia and Ukraine keep blaming each other. Russia has accused Ukraine of stalling negotiations and failing to follow through on plans to form working groups to explore possible deal terms. So Peskov also hopes that President Trump will be able to push Ukraine toward a settlement. Peskov said, "The Russian side remains open and ready for peace dialogue, and we hope that the influence of the United States and the diplomatic skills of President Trump's envoys will help encourage the Ukrainian side to be more active and more willing to engage in the peace process." Ukraine, in turn, says that Russia isn't serious about reaching an agreement, and while escalating the war, Russia is effectively demanding Ukraine's surrender. Yesterday, Ukrainian President Zelensky said that he will travel to the U.S. to meet President Trump on Friday for high-stakes talks. Their talks are expected to focus on strengthening Ukraine's air defense and expanding its access to long-range weapons, including the possible transfer of Tomahawk cruise missiles. Zelensky wrote, "The main focus of the visit is air defense and our long-range capabilities, aimed at exerting pressure on Russia for the sake of peace. I am grateful to President Trump for our dialogue and his support." President Zelensky also said that his delegation, led by the Ukrainian Prime Minister, has already departed for the United States. They are scheduled to hold meetings with U.S. officials and members of Congress ahead of the Friday meeting. And actually, the agenda for the Ukrainian delegation extends beyond weapons. They also have plans to discuss emergency power capabilities since Ukraine needs to prepare for winter. Recently, Russian forces have targeted gas production facilities and the national grid, which forced Ukraine to import electricity. In the global Gen Z revolution that has raged for weeks, young protesters have toppled yet another government, this time in the former French colony of Madagascar. Opposition leaders and government officials in the country stated yesterday that the president has fled abroad and is currently unaccounted for. Yesterday evening, Madagascar President Andry Rajoelina delivered a video address via social media stating that due to threats to his personal safety, he had relocated to a secure location without disclosing his specific whereabouts. The Republic of Madagascar is one of the least developed countries. Its economy is primarily agricultural. It is heavily reliant on foreign aid and has a weak industrial base. The protests erupted on September 25th, primarily initiated by young people. Initially focused on chronic power outages and water shortages in the impoverished nation, they quickly escalated into a broader anti-government movement targeting corruption, government dysfunction, and the lack of basic services, demanding the president's resignation. The president deployed police forces in an attempt to quell the wave of protesters. According to the United Nations statistics, at least 22 people have been killed and over 100 injured since September 25th. The most critical turning point came on Saturday. The elite CAPSAT unit, which had helped Rajoelina seize power during the 2009 coup, announced that it would refuse to carry out orders to open fire. It criticized the gendarmerie for using harsh tactics against protesters, resulting in several deaths. Last Saturday, the unit joined thousands of demonstrators in the capital. Subsequently, CAPSAT announced that it had taken control of the military. Yesterday, military officers supporting the protests formally took over the military police. The parliamentary opposition told Reuters that President Rajoelina had flown out of the country on Sunday after the military mutinied and joined the protesters. A military source told Reuters that Rajoelina left the country on Sunday aboard a French military aircraft. Radio France Internationale reported that he departed after reaching an agreement with French President Macron. The source stated that a French military Casa Transport aircraft landed at Sainte-Marie Airport on the eastern island of Madagascar on Sunday. 5 minutes later, a helicopter arrived, and Ratswaina, who was aboard the helicopter, departed on the Casa Transport aircraft. France is Madagascar's former colonial power, and the two countries have a long-standing relationship. France is Madagascar's largest trading partner and source of direct investment, as well as its main provider of bilateral aid. In fact, 65% of Madagascar's foreign direct investment originates from France. Yesterday, large crowds of protesters took to the streets chanting anti-government slogans and waving a large banner featuring the Japanese manga One Piece, a symbol of Gen Z protest movements worldwide, demanding President Ratswaina step down while paying tribute to those who lost their lives in the protest. The Senate of Madagascar announced in a statement that Jean-André Andjemangiri has been provisionally appointed to replace the Senate president. In the absence of a president, the Senate president will temporarily assume the duties of the president until new elections are held. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.